everybody, it's Felisa, and this is another entry for Vlogmas. Um, I saw this topic floating around Facebook, even though I'm supposed to be on a hiatus, but since I've been sick and I've been hanging out in the house, um, I was bored. So I went surfing. Anyway, the topic was pretty intriguing to me because I admittedly am kind of on the fence, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And it wasn't even a question. It was more like a statement slash rant, which basically said, married people need to stop acting like single people cannot give them sage advice, particularly when it's common sense kind of stuff, in their marriage or in their relationship. Many of us singles have been married, we've been divorced, we've been in relationships, we have a fair sense of perspective in terms of how to make marriages work or how to make marriages fail, one of the other. And so, I think that it's unfair to disqualify someone who is single solely because they're single and, as if they don't have a perspective that may help you. Again, particularly if it is a common sense kind of observation, such as, if you are being attitude knowing your feelings for no reason. Sometimes it really does take, a girlfriend to tell you, sis, you're wrong on this one. You need to really go take some deep breaths and some cleansing and meditate and go in there and have a conversation with your husband because you're out of order. I think that it takes friendship and it takes relationship to be able to do that. I also think, though, that not every situation demands or even requires your input. And that's married and single. Sometimes you just need to know your place, and if someone has not come directly to you for advice or for, your opinion, you might do well to keep that to yourself. I think that that's a lot of the reason that so many people get offended, just for whatever reason, because they feel like people are overstepping their bounds and inserting and insinuating themselves into their relationship. I also want to be careful to say that sometimes people are invited into the relationship and they don't know that they've done that. Like, if you are going around talking about all your problems with your man or, all your problems with your girl, and even if you're speaking rhetorically and you didn't ask for anybody's input, you literally have invited people into your relationship and they're going to evaluate it and judge it. Whether they say something to you or not is inconsequential because the wheels are already turning. We either think that you are stone cold fool for even dealing with that foolishness, or we think that you're bat crazy. Try not to curse. We think that you are bat crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? I could never be. What, girl? If I, So you need to be careful about who you're sharing your information with and how you're presenting your relationship in the first place to even solicit some advice. Again, like I said, I do think that there are situations that warrant, people who are in relationship with you, i.e. your good girlfriends, i.e., really close brothers or, friends or whatever, to pull your coattails and tell you that you're out of order and that you're about to shipwreck and ruin a relationship or do some damage that you might not be able to recover from. I think that that's important, and I think that you need to have a multitude of those people in your life that are able to tell you to cease and desist when you are getting out of pocket and you are spinning out of control, because damaging yourself is not the way to go. I think, though, for the most part, relationships are unique to the people who are in them. Not that you won't have situations and circumstances that are similar or encounter those things that are familiar, or people have a tendency to kind of compare notes or what have you. But I do think that because the situation, whatever that situation is greatly influenced by the dynamics of the couple that experience it, by their inherent personality, by their inherent ability to resolve and rationalize, by their coping mechanisms, by their emotional intelligence. Sometimes people can have all of the great tools but have a deficit in emotional intelligence, which means that they don't have the empathy, they don't have the ability to rationalize or to see something from an emotional standpoint because they're so analytical. That could be very difficult. And if you have someone that is hot-blooded and passionate, which is how I am, I do try and see things as logically as I possibly can, but there's this level and then up here, like this space in between is where it gets real murky and real dangerous. So what you want to do is try and keep me down here, because that's and I told y'all, we just want to Rein in the crazy, just want to rein it in. And I freely admit that it's there. Although I don't tap into it as much as I used to. There are certain triggers for real, for real. And unfortunately, once people know those triggers, they insist on firing them and then being very surprised that that's what they got. But that's another topic for another day. The point that I like to make is that, there are times when you certainly want to have someone who has expertise and who has the skill and who has the knowledge to be able to help you navigate certain situations. Those would be your counselors, your pastors, your clergymen, whatever, your trusted confidant, to be able to sit down and help you both navigate through whatever issue that you're having. Usually that comes from a lack of communication. And so sometimes it's really good to have an intermediary, to have a mediator, to have someone who is able to run interference and see things from both sides in an unbiased way and help you come to a resolve in the middle. Not everything needs to go to that level, though. Sometimes it really is just a matter of being able to take some time away. Again, having someone that you trust and who you can confide in, married or single, that will just give you some common sense resources, some common sense advice. Now, it can't be too in depth because I really, like I said, I caution against that. But just in terms of helping you to get a rein on your emotions and how you feel, and if your outlook makes sense and if your perspective makes sense, I think that it's important to get that balance, because we don't always have the equilibrium that we need in relationships because our hearts and our emotions are so invested in it. At least for me, I'll speak for myself. I think that it's two specific kind of scenarios that you want to think about it as. There are some situations where someone could be familiar enough to guide you through whatever situation you're in, and that can be a married or a single person or a divorced person. And so that analogy, I'll say, is very much like my OBGYN who delivered all 4 of my babies. Shout out to him. Who had nary contraction, carried nary child in his non-existent uterus, and has no earthly idea what it means to birth a child. But he coached me through that like a champ, and I have very, very healthy babies on the other side of that. So he had enough knowledge and skill base that even though he never experienced it for himself, even in a secondary capacity, he was able to do what needed to be done and help me feel more at ease and more comfortable. Then there are situations that definitely require expertise and skill. Not just expertise and skill. You needed to have definitely experienced this, and I'm going to use an airplane pilot. I don't think that I would feel comfortable if the person that flew my plane to Africa had only done flight simulators and played flight games on a Nintendo Switch. Even if they had finished flight school but hadn't completed all of their hours, yeah. I don't think that I would trust them to get me to where I needed to get safely. So those are, two, extremely different scenarios. But I think that you have to begin to categorize what in your life is permissible and appropriate to have single people or unmarried people kind of speak to your life in a general way and receive good sage counsel from people who make sense, who actually have some wisdom, because wisdom is not limited to your marital status or to your gender or to even to your age. It just is. Some things are just a matter of wisdom, and some things are just a matter of common sense. Yeah, some things are just a matter of common sense, and common sense should be for everybody. We should not have to limit common sense. And then there are some things that, should definitely be left to those people who are not just married, but married successfully. I think that we have to stop this tendency of hashtagging relationship goals for everything that we see and not really understanding the real work and the real investment that's going on behind the scenes, because you can desire something and really, really want that because on the surface it looks great, and then you get into it and you figure out this ain't what you want. Anyway, I'm Felisa. Leave your comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that single people can give great advice to married couples, or do you think that kind of in my scenario, it's depending on what the situation is or what the advice is going to be. If it's common sense kind of stuff, yes, but if it's stuff that's specific to marriage, successful marriage, probably not. Love to hear your comments. Talk to y'all later. Bye.